Welcome to the Talking Shh podcast. That's right. We'll be talking about music, albums, live shows, bands we love, bands not so much. Again, we're talking shh. Join me, Scott Nokon, and Stephen James. Hey, we are back, and welcome to another Talking Shh show, episode 31. Stephen, how's that?
Yeah. We were just listening to 7 the other day.
Yeah, really. Yeah. It's funny. I had a work event yesterday. Pardon me as I get some caffeine to get me through. I want to make sure I'm like rearing and ready to go. It's been a good week. It's been kind of long. Today was just like an all day meeting with trying to do work in between, which is never a good idea. And you want to stay focused on what you're doing. And that's just
Absolutely.
Never complaining, always appreciative, always grateful, but still, you got to catch up. And, I have traveled this weekend, so I fly out of Nashville Saturday midday, and I get back in Thursday. So that'll be a nice long week. So all good. Anyway, I was at this work event last night. So good thing. I live, and this will probably sound hoity-toity, but I live just across the way from a vineyard, or winery.
Hey, nice.
And
Nice.
and the event, and I had nothing to do with it, was planned to be there. So that's literally a couple minutes from my house. So able to leave, at a normal time and get over there. And it was really nice out. It sits up on a hill, so you can see the surrounding. I'm sure I'm creating a very nice visual for everyone. But it's the weather has been decent in Tennessee for the last week or so. High 70s, low 80s. It is October, right? So eventually,
that's not bad.
No, not at all. So it might eventually cool down. But in that, a buddy of mine who I work with and is also an avid listener of the show, so appreciate that. A few weeks back, we were traveling somewhere and we were in an Uber. And we're just talking about, and this is all unprompted by me, so it's kind of cool. He just kind of brings up the show and brings up the topics, and when I saw him, we're tasting some wine, and he's like, yeah, on the way over here, I was listening to episode 27, and I had to pause for a second. I'm like, oh wait, yeah, that's the one that just came out. So, we release these on a Monday, and Spotify primarily, but it's every place now that you can stream a podcast. Even YouTube Music. If you don't know about YouTube Music, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, when he said 27, I had to oh, that's right. Yeah. So this is episode 31.
Pause.
Episode. And I was drinking alcohol, so for that pregnant pause, you got to be careful. But anyway, and I'm not easy either. But anyway, I did. That's appropriate. It was that pause, that pregnant pause, just to go kind of turn my head to the side. And I guess we've been doing this for a little while. So
we have.
So that's awesome. And so again, one of the last few that we've released have been longer episodes, and that was also some feedback that I received, and more so not like you got to be long, you have to have a longer show. Just would you guys do longer episodes? I go, I guess we could. It wasn't overly thought about, but the last few have been a good hour plus. So same thing. If you don't have the time, you just put pause. If it's on your phone or listening to your car, you just pick it up. As soon as you get out, and the magic of technology, it just picks up and plays again. So,
and it helps. It helps us if you watch the whole thing.
Absolutely.
I know it's long sometimes. Some people don't have the attention span. And I get it because I'm kind of the same way. But I put it on at work in the background when I'm working, and it's fun to listen to stuff that I can't remember half the things we talked about. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And it's fun. Yeah. It's such a groovy, cool channel. We're not 9 million subscribers and making $5 million a year, but it's not about the money. It's about the fun and sharing our accolades for music and the appreciation of what we like. And again, we always mention if you have suggestions of things you
Mhm.
would like us to talk about, please feel free to drop in a comment.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So with that, I wanted to highlight a couple things, if I may, Stephen. So
Please.
just bringing up my old phone here. So one of them just with a tour that's going on now, and admittedly, I've probably said before, and I'll stick with this. I'm still probably a purist in the sense when it comes to Queensryche. Again, Jeff Tate to me is Queensryche, but
I agree.
I have an appreciation for the newer regime, which has been going for what good probably 20 years themselves,
At
right?
least.
So right now they're doing a tour and they're playing the Warning and the EP. It's called the Origins Tour. So that's
Interesting.
coming through October 10th, Brooklyn Bowl in Nashville. So I might go check it out.
Hmm.
I know I mentioned in our last episode, Megadeth was coming through town and they played Saturday night at the Nashville Auditorium. I did not make it. Um, though it wasn't a school night, I just didn't make it out. I heard kind of mixed reviews. I heard Megadeth was really good. Heard Mudvayne was okay. Um, and the opener was All That Remains. I heard they were strong. Overall, the reports of the Nashville Auditorium is a probably 40-year-old structure, and it's before they built the arena there. So it probably holds, I don't know, let's say 8,000. That was where all the bands could play because there wasn't any other place. Now
It's a
there's
pretty
10
good
million.
sized place for
Yeah, yeah, definitely
8K.
good size.
Heck yeah.
Size matters, right?
That's what she said.
But big cement structure, probably not the best acoustically, and that was kind of the reports where the sound was kind of bouncing all over the place. So obviously, when you go to a show, you want to have a good experience.
Absolutely.
From a sound perspective.
And that's tough too for even playing like an outside of events that a lot of times if they don't peg the sound right, it just goes up and out. And you're like, unfortunately for the people that are in the back, they're like, I can barely hear them. What's going on? It's like, because the
Yeah,
sound just went through if you were to sit on the roof, you'd probably hear them really good. But sorry, I
yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt,
exactly.
but
And it's funny you
sound
mentioned.
is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned an outdoor space because in my Facebook memories yesterday, because I always, start my morning on Facebook, no better
Because we're
way
old.
than just yeah, but not always. But really, I like to, kind of reflect on, when I used to check in a lot more. I think I've gotten away from that somewhat, which is
I
probably
think
good.
so.
But anyway, 2 years ago, outdoor show, Elton John at the Nissan Stadium, which is the football stadium downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time, and I think I mentioned this to you. If not, it's worth reporting and repeating right now. That was one of the best sounding shows I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Outdoor stadium, 85, 90,000 people, maybe close to 100. I guess
That's
it
insane.
could, with the amount of seats that you put on the
On the
stadium
floor.
floor.
Yeah.
And I get it. One of the icons all time of music is going to have top notch sound, top notch
Yeah,
equipment,
of
clearly.
course.
And it was so loud, but not deafening. And it just sounded great. So anyway, like you can compare contrast in an old cement building from reports I heard to then literally a half mile away to an outdoor stadium.
Sure.
If you got the equipment and you got the technology and you got it's really the skill. I think sound guys are probably
Absolutely.
underappreciated. You can make a decent band sound great, and you make a crappy band sound crappy, but very pure, right?
Yeah.
Very, very clear. But anyway, that was in our consistent ramblings that I do on every show. I try to do it a few times. Again, that was a cool memory just to look back at that.
Well, what do you think Udo would think about it?
Well, Udo, I'm glad you mentioned Udo. So I was also looking around, and it was not Udo coming through Nashville, but it was Accept with KK's Priest. And unfortunately, I was on
Yeah,
the road when they came through about 10 days ago. I was hoping to go and check it
that would
out.
have been
More
fun.
so just to maybe track down the singer of Accept on our first or second show. We
Yeah,
brought it up by trying to get some sound bites on his comments that metal
medals.
just isn't relevant in
Yeah,
United States anymore. But here you are playing at a
yeah,
show
right. And in the
on a
United
decent
States.
tour. So I think there's relevancy. Maybe it's not for you as
Yeah.
much, but yeah, I think we had a little bit of fun with that.
Well,
Uh,
and to me, I think that you're not the original singer, so if you're drawing attention to yourself uh, in hopes of pushing Accept back up, but Accept
yeah,
is Udo as far as I'm concerned. So, and this guy
absolutely.
doesn't sound anything like him as far
No,
as I'm concerned. And if you're watching this, I appreciate that you're trying, dude, but
yeah,
Udo still smokes you.
absolutely. Yeah. Udo is the king. And the what, Fast as a Shark, was it Fast as a Shark?
Fast as a
Was that
shark.
the name of the record? Clearly
I
I know the
think.
song, but that just had an anniversary just in the last couple days as well. Probably 81, 82. I know we've
Yeah.
talked about that as well.
Yeah.
I thought I hit on this, and then we're going to give a little love and appreciation to Wheelie Q and then get into our
Oh,
topic.
yes.
But Forbes magazine, where you go for your or not, but for your financial information, why not that mag, that publication, which has been a reputable source over the years? Why wouldn't they be the right place to post the greatest heavy metal bands of all time? So
Oh, okay.
we'll just jump to the top five.
Let's do it.
Judas Priest,
Okay.
Pantera, number four.
Okay.
Iron Maiden, number three.
Okay.
Number two, Black Sabbath. And number one, Metallica.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm good with that list.
I am too.
The and we've mentioned this before, for sure. But Black Sabbath, the impact, significance they've had for sure, obviously matters. I think they kind of lost their way after the first probably two records, and those Ozzy records, just kind of went off. I don't know. Some love all those records. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Never Say Die. I still have all those in vinyl. But to me, the got to give credit for the first Sabbath record for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm going to anger people with this. Is that Sabbath was heavy, but I mean, as they got later with maybe Dio and who else sang with them? You're better with Sabbath than I am.
Well, there were like seven singers. So,
Yeah.
so you got Ozzy, Ronnie James Dio, which those two records, Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules, are in my top, probably 10 records of all time, and probably would be my more favored from a Sabbath overall collection. Ian Gillan, who was in Deep
Oh yeah, I
Purple,
remember.
just
Yep.
one record, but that was a
Sounded
great record.
good.
It did, yeah. I really loved it. But there's stories, and we could do a whole episode, and we always tease what we could do, and
An
we will
entire
get to
Black
what we're
Sabbath
supposed
show.
to do. But all the singers, yeah. Ray Gillan, he toured, he never recorded. He was in Badlands, yeah, Badlands, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's a few others. I'm drawing a blank right now, but yeah, there was quite a few. They just did a whole re-release for one era that I'm not even going to remember what the name is right now. And again, if you're listening to us for the first time, this is normal, Scott. If I don't have a prompt in front of me, sometimes I'm just going to like randomly either say something or I'll remember.
Isn't that a Led Zeppelin song called Ramble On?
It is Ramble On, yeah.
So back to the Black Sabbath thing. Yes, they were heavy and dark with Ozzy, but to me, when Dio came in, is when it kind of turned full throttle. What I consider would be heavy metal.
Yeah. Yeah.
and listing. And again, when we give a list, we're just reading them. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's our favorite from 1 to 5 or 5 to 1. It's just a
Yeah.
list we're reading from.
Yeah.
So it's
And
not
so
like,
please,
oh, you like them better. It's like, no, no, no.
no. On that one, yeah, we cited the source. That was, Forbes magazine,
Mm-hmm.
again, your source for heavy metal bands. Uh, yeah, and we cited it. That's one of the singers I wanted to mention, and I forgot. But Glenn Hughes, who
Oh
was
yeah,
1986 on Seven Star,
still
Ray
got a great
Gillen.
voice.
We talked about Ian Gillan. Again, Ray Gillen from Badlands with Jake E. Lee. He actually just did shows. He never recorded with them. Tony Martin, like
Oh yeah.
Tony Martin, the Eternal Idol, Headless Cross, Tyre. Dio came back and did Dehumanizer in 1992. There's probably another singer in there. Yeah, Tony Martin returned. It was an interesting kind of. You look at the impact, and again, a whole show on Sabbath with their singers, I think would be kind of fun too, because when you really start breaking down their history, it's really kind of interesting. Because at one point, the only remaining original member was Tony Iommi, and then
Mm-hmm.
guys started coming back in. So was it a complete revolving door? Not entirely, but it's almost like everyone had shift work, and then they came back in, and then they had the drummers, and then um, Jimmy Bain came back in. He passed away a couple years ago now, right? But
Sadly, on that
yeah,
cruise ship. Oh, it's
he
horrible.
came back in and did stuff, and then Geezer Butler, and then now, and we talked about this is would Black Sabbath come back and do some final shows? Read some articles, right? That's very possible. So you bring back Bill Ward if he's able to play. I believe he is.
Yeah.
And he lives, kind of in the Orange County, Long Beach area still. You know, you got Geezer Butler who's still going strong. Tony
Yeah.
Iommi is still releasing music, and Ozzy, obviously, much publicized health issues, and I guess now, and who knows, supposedly Sharon kicked him out of the house. So
Oh my
who
goodness.
knows? Maybe at 74, he's going to be, you know, lassoing in some 20-year-olds. Who knows? I don't know. That might be that might be a little disgusting, but let's just say,
Well, she keeps making her face try to look like a 20-year-old, but
yeah. So
every
so
time
who
she
knows?
blinks, her face blinks. So
Yeah. So again, Sabbath. That was the taking it back in. They were number 2 on the Forbes list, and Metallica number 1. So I think that's
they probably get Vinny Appice to play drums if Bill Ward wouldn't do it.
yeah, but very likely, right? Yeah. Is it Appice or a piece? I know we've talked about that
Carmine
before.
is a piece,
That's-
and Vinny
yeah.
is Appice,
Yeah, and they're related. They're brothers,
and they are brothers.
but why pronounce it the same?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Hey.
So one thing that we can pronounce
Rock
correctly,
and
or
roll.
at least try to, is Wheelie Q barbecue. So again, we're talking about the weather. We always give you a little bit of weather, traffic, and sports coming up at 15 past the hour, right, Stephen?
Yes.
But with Wheelie Q, back when Colin and Kyla were hand filling hundreds of barbecue sauce bottles in their kitchen, they had 2 simple yet powerful goals: craft a delicious barbecue sauce from simple, honest ingredients, and use their business to make a difference. They have. That's how Wheelie Q barbecue came to life. Colin, who was born with spinal muscular atrophy, SMA, has faced challenges of a life-altering condition with incredible resilience. When his condition forced him to quit his job in 2013, he didn't give up. Instead, he turned his passion for barbecue into a thriving business. Wheelie Q, wow. See, almost
Winnie Q.
Wheelie
You had it. You're
Q
good.
barbecue. Wheelie Q barbecue isn't just about great flavor. It's about raising awareness for SMA and donating a portion of profits to fund research for a cure. Today, Wheelie Q
Absolutely.
Barbecue is producing their original recipe barbecue sauce by the thousands and has expanded their product line to include barbecue rub, salt, pepper, and garlic seasoning, and ancho espresso seasoning. At Wheelie Q, every bottle supports a greater cause, and every seasoning will elevate the flavor of anything you cook. Thank you for choosing Wheelie Q Barbecue and helping Colin and Kyla make a difference, one delicious meal at a time. You go out to their site, Wheelie Q, that's WHEELYQ.com, WheelieQ.com, and at checkout, use the coupon code TSP20. That's TSP20 for 20% off. That's Wheelie Q Barbecue.
And elevate the flavor.
Yes. Yes, do that. And you
That's
still
their
can.
slogan.
Again, in
Elevate the
California, you can
flavor.
barbecue all along, and I could probably barbecue out here up until,
Oh,
you know,
elevate the flavor. Is it backwards? Probably.
yeah. And they just updated their website. So kudos, fresh
They did.
website.
It's
Yeah.
different from the last week when I went on.
So get the product. And it's good. I've used it. It's really good. It tastes great.
And the prices are reasonable. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't find quality like this in grocery stores that are just jacking the prices up.
Yeah.
So please give them and help them out. That's
Yeah,
the whole goal, is to
absolutely.
help them
Yeah.
out. It's about giving.
Completely. Awesome. All right. Well, Stephen, we got a topic this week, so I thought
We
we'd kind of
do.
get into it. But before we do, anything you want to add to, anything you want to mention before we do so?
I thought there was some recent news. Interestingly enough, and this is probably not. I don't know if you got a lot of people are into watching this show on YouTube where they eat the hot wings and they get hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter.
Okay. Yeah.
But Clown and Corey did a face-off with eating these hot wings, and it was really good. If you guys get a chance, I don't know. It's not. I'm not trying to promote Slipknot at all, but I'm a huge fan of Slipknot.
Yep.
But this is a fun look. Yeah, I thought there was some sort of music news, and it's kind of baffled me because, and I know nobody wants to hear about my work woes, but it's been a tumultuous week of I'm transitioning from one job to another. So I'm letting that go now, and we're going into music. And
Yeah.
that's all I
Absolutely.
have.
Yeah. No. Well, everything's going to work out as it should, and
Absolutely.
yeah, we'll definitely. I know you got a big show next week, right? Maiden's coming to town. Iron Maiden.
I do. I'm going to see Iron Maiden, and I don't know why it's on a Tuesday night, but
Yeah.
if they come to town, I can't miss them. So it's a couple of. I think I mentioned in the past, a couple people are saying Nico's not really playing like he used to. It's like, well, he had a stroke in January.
Yeah, give him a break.
He's
Come on.
up, in his late 60s,
Mhm.
still touring on a fairly rigorous schedule with a
Yeah.
band that has so much energy, and let it go. He's doing his job.
Yeah,
He's doing his
absolutely.
job.
And yeah, that would be, I'm on the road, so I'll be on the other part of the country. Probably the near the southernmost tip on the East Coast. So I can't get any further from where you will be on Tuesday, seeing
right.
an Iron Maiden show. So I definitely wish I could be there.
Looking forward.
And they just announced that big tour, Run to the Hills, right?
50 years. Yeah.
50 years. And that's in 25. And there's more dates to be announced. So looking forward to that. And then another, and I will go, and they haven't put out any dates in Tennessee yet, but they're going to, and no California dates yet, but per Jeff Tate, per his website and his socials, this will be the in 25. This will be the last time they play Operation Mindcrime all the way through, and then he'll fit in other songs as well. So that'll be pretty epic. But again, here's someone who is 64, maybe 65 by the time he comes around again, and he had people will have health issues as you get older. He had some heart issues, and he came back strong, and he's still playing a good hour and a half, 2 hour set, and he's touring all over the world. He's in Europe right now.
Wow.
So yeah, when he comes back, I'll make sure I go to that. But that'll be pretty fantastic to check
and I'll
that
definitely
out.
do. And I would, I don't like to speculate because that's just what it is, but I'd be willing to bet that this 50th Iron Maiden tour probably might be it. They're all, they still put on an amazing show. I've watched highlights from videos in Australia recently, and they still have it. But after a while, especially the jet engine that runs, you see that behind me.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work to do through a 2 hour set.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're up in age. it gets tiring, because there's
Yeah.
not a lot of breaks in between.
And one band, and this will be a topic. Again, we're teasing topics, and we're about 30 seconds to get into ours, I promise. Um, Bands that should go away, and they went away, and they signed a contract, and then they broke their own commitment and came back to not really good reviews. And not an entire original lineup back with John Five, who's a phenomenal guitarist, but taking the spot, almost said Judas Priest, which is another band, which I'll add. This would be 5 bands I'll talk about, so I'll end on them. Motley Crue they just announced a residency in Las Vegas coming in March. I think February, March. I won't be going. Just I'll put it out there now.
I won't
I can't even imagine how it's going to sound, and that's just not being. I guess it is talking but really, looking at plenty of videos that have been published. And I remember one time someone said, it's like when Vince Neil is singing, it sounds like he's singing in cursive.
There's a lot of videos on if you Google funny Vince Neil lyrics, they'll kind of write them out, and it's hilarious because he's
just like
he's horrible. There's a lot of rumors that there's a lot of like Nikki Sixx isn't even playing bass. They got bass tracks.
Right.
I mean, I know they should. When they hung it up at the Forum, a few years ago, they were like, "Oh, that's it. That should have been it."
It should have. It was an epic, and I'm glad I did not go. I didn't
go see him.
Yeah, I didn't go, but I'm thinking, was I even living there? And I think I did when that was still going on. But anyway, yeah, so that should be interesting. People will buy tickets, I would imagine, just for the novelty of doing a residency. And no, it's not at the Sphere. Motley Crue's not doing the Sphere. I believe it's Binion's downtown. They're doing a residency in the cocktail bar.
Why?
It's not that. Yeah.
Wow.
That would be really funny if it was. I think they're playing at the Dolby Theater at MGM.
Oh, really? Hey, you know what? Real quick, when we went to see U2 at the Sphere, we always like to. I belong to the MGM Players Club. I don't gamble a lot
because you're a player.
I like to just visit their different hotels. Yeah. And I was like, hey, let's give MGM a try. Why? Because it was at the complete opposite ends of where the Sphere was.
Yeah.
And all I can say is MGM Grand, update your rooms. They're old.
It. Yeah. So I will be in Vegas in 2 weeks. Again, work related.
Bummer.
So yeah, and it'll be there a few days, but here's the, all the work related stuff, of course, is going to be the reason we're there, and it's going to make sense, and it's going to, generate new business and all that. Wednesday evening at, I believe at the theater that's inside the Planet Hollywood, Judas Priest. So
wow.
We already have plans. Some of my, coworkers, we've already talked about it. And, some are even saying, well, hey, can we get some clients to come along? I'm like, I'm sure we can. Just, reach out. We already got a group, probably about 6 of us at least. So we're going to, just buy a lot of tickets. But yeah, let's go see Judas Priest, because same thing where you just said Maiden, that next year that could be it. And I could see that riding off on the sunset after 50 years. Judas Priest is not that far along, actually, from the time they were an official band. It's over 50 years.
Yeah.
And then when they started releasing records, same thing. I want to see them. It's been a number of years. And so it'll be great. It'll be something. So I'm looking forward to that.
The last time I saw them was the British Steel anniversary tour.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So I think that would be
Whitesnake
cool.
opened up for them, which was like, oh, shit.
Okay. Yeah. So, a little Sentinel, a little, let's see. You got another thing coming.
Some of those.
Some tracks off Defenders of the Faith. Maybe even Turbo. Come on.
I think they're doing Turbo.
Then go deep and do British Steel and do something off Sad
Go
Wings.
deep after I said Turbo Lover. That was funny.
Well, yeah. Come on. Hey, and whatever works.
Yeah. Exactly.
So our topic this week. 30 minutes into it. So if you're hanging with us after 30 minutes or just about, that was kind of our prelude, right, Stephen? That's just kind of just getting getting warmed up, and we'll spend 5 minutes on this topic. No, we'll
Yeah,
go a little bit longer.
probably.
But one drum roll. I don't know if you can hear that.
Hold on.
Yeah, please. Nice. Christian heavy metal.
How about that?
So we'll give you some history. You know, it dates back into the late 70s, early 80s. When I was doing some research, I had to kind of giggle, Stephen, on some of the bands they have listed. Where I'm like, I don't think Dark Angel is a Christian band. So
No.
folks, kids, be careful what you pull off the internet, because it's not always accurate. And yeah, I know that's shocking. You've probably never heard it before, but your friends here at Talking will make sure that you guys don't get pulled down a wrong path. Anyway, a little bit of history, if I may, then Stephen, you know, I'll throw it over to you for,
Go for it.
you know, just kind of your opening, that is. So Christian heavy metal, you know, from a genre, you know, late 70s, early 80s. Sure. You know, the music itself is exactly what it is. It's metal, it's hard rock. And where the difference was certainly to fall into that Christian moniker was the themes and the lyrics. You know, were bands influenced by Sabbath and Zeppelin at the early stage? Absolutely. You know, but then as they called it the burgeoning Jesus movement, then it was Christian artists. So some of these bands, which I know the name, so from a history and historical standpoint, I'm going to go through this over the next minute or two. So first wave, early Christian bands, Daniel Band in Jerusalem, late 70s, experimenting with heavy metal sounds, and then, you know, again, adding in Christian messages. That was really the distinction. You know, positivity, growth, you know, do good, you know, all those things. In the 80s, then more of the rise. 80s saw the emergence of, you know, bands, probably arguably the biggest metal Christian band of all time, Stryper, right?
Yeah.
Mainstream attention, you know, glam metal, Messages of Faith, 1984 album Soldiers Under Command really was pivotal. Wow, pivotal? It was pivotal.
That's good enough.
It was pivotal as well.
To hell with
other
the
bands,
devil.
yeah, other bands, that was a good record, and that was a great song too.
That was a great song.
Other bands, Bloodgood, White Cross, Guardian. I've seen all these. I'll give a little bit of after Stephen goes, I'll give a little bit of a deep dive on that, because in that I'll tee this up, and I think this is where, you know, Stephen and I our paths crossed many years ago unknowingly.
A couple of these bands,
yeah, with that. So we'll kind of hit on that. Yeah. And it's in that, you know, they went all the way from glam to thrash. All the different subcultures were represented. All of them really that well, not necessarily. Not really. We'll dig into that.
You don't hear very much.
Again, it was about the Christian message. You kind of get into more mainstream in the 90s. POD, Living Sacrifice, who was fantastic. They kind of gained traction in the broader metal scene. Heavy sounds, and then you added in rap and hardcore. Again, like most styles, you could find a Christian representative in any of those. In the 2000s, rise of metalcore and post-hardcore bands. Some of these names I've never heard of, honestly.
As I Lay Dying, I've heard of.
Yeah, so that August Burns Red, Under Oath, where not everybody probably realized, and you know what, it at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you're more mainstream, and then people go, oh, I didn't know you're a Christian, and we're digging into this topic a little bit more. You are, but then you kind of get est on a little bit. I guess we won't curse in a Christian metal show, right? But if there is definitely a view that not everyone was looked at fairly or properly, and it's like, you're not a true Christian band. Well, really, what is that? And I'll share some of my own opinions a little bit. Ongoing evolution. We'll kind of, you know, today. Bands like Fit for a King, I don't know for today. There's other bands that I play on my show that you wouldn't even I wouldn't know unless I looked it up, and I'll hit on those in a second. So, you know, that's kind of some of the wide, broader history. Stephen, you know, where do you want to jump in at?
Well, I was I kind of got involved in that whole thing when it blew up. There was this heavy metal Christian church that was in the South Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was like kind of like the thing to do. It was like, oh, okay, well, we're heavy metal and it's heavy metal and there's musicians. And, you know, I was involved and played in a few of the iterations of some of these bands, maybe not as far as recording.
Yeah.
But Vengeance Rising, for instance.
Yep.
I was in and about and played with them a little bit, and then Vengeance Rising turned into another band called Die Happy, which is I have their. It's they're really good. And it's funny. I watched a video of it today, and they were playing a song that had kind of a slower meter, and they were all just spinning their heads like it was like a. And it just kind of made me laugh. I looked at it. I was like, I bet you guys look back at that and go, "What the frick were we thinking about?" See how I didn't cuss there?
Yeah. See, we're keeping it. We're keeping it.
Yeah, we'll keep it Christian-like. And then Glenn Rogers was kind of in and a part of that whole scene as well. And he and I did some things together. You know, so that whole scene was big. And then the other band that doesn't list here, which was a really good band, is called Barren Cross. They didn't get as big as some of these other bands, but they should have. They were definitely an underrated. I got to know those guys. As a matter of fact, I bought the drummer's drum set. I guess a picture of it where there's drums that go from here to here. And I'm like, what did I need all that for?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, the bass player I became really good friends with. His name's Jim Laverty. He's a super cool guy and a phenomenal bass player. So, you know, at the time, I don't know if it was so much the message as it was just I was just into heavy metal, and they played great heavy metal songs, and that's all I really cared about. I didn't get the message. It just it didn't resonate with me.
No, for sure. It's again, and this is where the kind of convergence of our lives, 35, maybe add one or two onto that years ago.
Absolutely.
Where it was it Calvary Chapel, or it was, what was the other? I know that was prominent in
Calvary
that, but
was a big one.
Yeah. But what was the one? It was because it was Pastor Bob. I remember that.
Bob Beeman.
So, yeah. It's okay to.
I can't remember what that was called. Was it just
Sanctuary?
Called Sanctuary?
Sanctuary. There we go.
Sanctuary.
That's it.
How about that?
Yeah, in that, and we've hit on little bits of this, so I won't rehash all of it, but it does kind of shape, you know, one, and I'll let Stephen speak for himself like I always do, but my opinion about you know, Christians and Christian music, and kind of how it is exposed to it. So, you know, kind of going through this, again, we talked about, you know, being exposed, and I'll be careful saying that, but first time I was introduced to the Christian setting, raised Catholic, went to private school for my first 10 years. And then I transferred out for sports reasons, which didn't amount to anything. But at the time I thought I was making the best decision in the world, you know, going to my, you know, junior and senior year. But hey, you know what, you make decisions based on, you know, the information available to you at the time. So in that, one decision I made a few years prior to that was going to a band practice, and that band was Holy Soldier. And that's where I met Robbie Bronze, who was my my vocal coach, vocal teacher. And I still to this day thank him for what he was able to kind of show me. And in that led me to meeting Glenn Rogers when Holy Soldier kind of parted ways. They continued, and they actually became more popular as relative, but you know, they went on and got a deal maybe with like CBS or Columbia or something like that with a different singer. But Robbie went and formed Hero. That's where I met Glenn. So at that point, you know, Hero was you know, a Christian band, and I remember my buddy of mine, Jeff, we were the roadies, and I was the roadie that couldn't play a lick, but I could set it up. So, you know, I was Glenn's guitar tech for a number of years. We set up drums. Peter Thomas, you know, was kind of reminding me of Tommy Lee. And I remember one of the funny stories at time that, and there was, and in this group, I will say that there wasn't any false pretense with Robbie and Glenn and Peter. And there was two bass players. There was this one guy, Chris. He was kind of a weirdo. Okay, he probably fell into that. But then there was this second bass player, Brian, who was just a really just cool guy. So my opinions were actually was probably good. I met that group first as being kind of introduced to the Christian metal scene because they weren't judgy. They were just normal people, and that was a whole thing. That sounds very good. I was introduced again to that subculture of Christian music, and going to Sanctuary a few times. I thought it was strange. It was odd. A lot of it seemed like just a complete mask. It was fake. People weren't really like them true selves. It almost seems like if you, whatever bad things you did, it could have been that you smoked cigarettes or you used foul language, which we don't do on this show today. We're talking, but in that, if you were perceived as, if you became that way for whatever reason as being less than adequate, that group, and I'll say the group was pretty broad. They were quick to judge. So I guess you could say that sounds like a cult, which in hindsight it probably was, and is.
I said the same thing after I got out of it
to this day. So I never got too deep into it, but enough to kind of recognize and kind of have some self-awareness to say, I'm not going down that path. So what I never did outside of maybe just a jam, I wouldn't even call it a practice, a jam or two, where you were like in these bands. But, I think you had like a really good head on your shoulder, and you were, you had perspective and self-awareness where, we weren't all of a sudden recognizing that there's these shackles onto us and we can't get out of this thing. It really can truly be that, that bad of
it
what
did
it
get
was.
that way for me a little bit, because I even played with the church band on several occasions. They're like, hey, when you want to play drums, I'm like, yeah, no problem. But it got weird, and I don't want to tell stories here. We'll talk off the line, but I went through some things that you would be like, what?
Yeah.
I mean,
those aren't
and
pillows.
I look back and I giggle, and I look at, I'm not trying to crap on that whole thing at all. I'm, if anything, I'm a spiritual guy, and I believe in a bigger force. I don't necessarily believe on a fake deity on a cloud, but oops, I didn't mean to push people off, but it did have that same thing where it's like you went in and they're like, oh yeah, come in and check this out. And then you got there and then they were like, I don't know about you. You should.
Yeah.
I think
so.
You need
the
to be
judgy
exercised.
thing, right? And I don't want to make this a complete expose on Sanctuary. I guess maybe don't even say the name, but of a church, of a grouping, of a gathering, or individuals. I had my own experience. I'm going to keep it about the music, but there were certain things. I never got into a Christian band. I jammed a couple of times, but sometimes there was just it was just kind of odd there.
Yeah,
I'll kind of put it on that. And you want to kind of steer clear. And then the judgy and way people would look at you. And then, I'm going to bring it back, to some of these stories in a second, but I'll jump ahead. When I was playing in a band, and we talked about this on past episodes too, the band was called Gregorian Punks, Ponks. And it started as instrumental, Long Beach based. Dave Zest, Pete Papageorgis, then Kevin KP became the guitarist after Pete left, and then James Coates on drums there, everybody, and myself. What the single and only singer in that band, which was kind of cool. And we played a show with the band, which I thought when I was doing some research, these band names would pop up, but Deliverance, who had popularity, in a thrash setting, who Glenn played with as well. And
I was a part of that
Jimmy
at the
Brown,
very beginning.
Jimmy Brown. And I was a tech for Deliverance for a number of years as well. So I had really, really good experiences. And I got to, they did shows at churches, and they did these Christian Metal Fest. And it was like, okay. I kind of wanted to stay just in my own, like in my own lane. But yeah, it was, you
Yeah.
know, again, hey, do what you need to do, right? But do you, don't try to be manipulated by others, and that was part of it. But
Yeah, I
in
agree.
that setting with playing with Believer, this was at an outdoor amphitheater out in Riverside. Um, and they tried to kick us. I think I told you this before, Stephen. They worked with the promoter to get us kicked off the bill because we weren't of God. I go, you don't even know who we are,
Yeah.
So in that, at the time, I was probably 18, um, and I I don't know, from what I learned, I guess I'll go a little bit biblical, a little bit Christian, just a little bit, you know, do unto others as you would want done to
Yep.
yourself, right? The
Yep.
golden rule, even in a
Don't pass
Metallica song,
judgment.
do unto others as been
Yeah.
done to you,
Yeah.
it's like, all right, that's a prominent lyric in that. It's that if you went to Catholic school, Christian school, or you just stumbled across, ultimately it's about just being a good person. And here is this, maybe it was one person, maybe it was the band. I think it was kind of more so kind of driven by the guitar player, if memory serves me right. Kudos to the promoter. I don't remember his name, but he goes, he didn't kneel to their wishes, and we played the show, and
Didn't
we
bend the knee.
bend the knee. Did not bend the knee. No, we sold. That was the most merchandise we sold at any show,
Nice.
and we had fun. It was great. That's a memory to this day of that. But it's like,
That's cool.
you know, isn't this an opportunity so to look at? And we didn't have a conversation, and I guess not necessarily a regret, but it would have been kind of fun, maybe to mess with them a little bit,
Of
because we
course.
could have brought out like goat heads and cow heads and all that just to freak them out, to say, oh, you really think we're bad? We'll show you. But we was
Don't
just
do
us.
this. Don't do this
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
show.
I'll see you right there. We'll do that. Anyway, it would have been nice to have a conversation to understand their position. But they never, but kind of cowardly. They never approached
Yeah.
us. They tried to go through that. So that, still at an impressionable age, I got to stop using these SAT words, right? I was like, you know what? I don't have any time for you. And it's like, same
No.
thing. If you respect me, I'll respect you. I'm not going to lead in there, be cynical. I'm more cynical as you get older. I guess that's part
Of
of life.
course.
But at the same time, it's like, I want to be around kind of positivity. I want to be around good vibes. I want people, like you, that we can relate to items and we can just ease into conversations and there's really no drama, and all that was just unnecessary. So, I'll hand it over to you in about a minute, I promise. But in that was more a matter of, okay, where I was a little leery of what this, sect was and what it was
Hmm.
about. And while I
Yeah.
met some folks that I still talk to this day, all those years later, most of it was just, you know, not necessarily people that thought for themselves. I'll generalize a little bit. Certainly there were hypocrites,
Yeah.
and it
Very
was
much
like
so.
you had no tolerance for anybody, which again, we're not doing Bible verses 101 on this show. But if you're all about the scripture and all about understanding what it represents, you are not walking the walk at all. And
No.
it's
And they shamed you
that
for
was
it.
amazing. Yeah. Oh yeah, and they did.
They
So
shamed us for it. Like
yeah,
if you didn't go out and witness and Bible thump on whatever, it's like I got better things to do. I mean, I'm
yeah,
not trying to lure you people in. I'm just a part of it.
absolutely. Yeah. So that's kind of the personal setting. I'll kind of get out of that because I don't want to kind of stay negative any longer on there. But that certainly was, left a, to this day. I don't dwell on it at all. But when
No.
we were thinking about doing this topic, it's like you can't help but, because we had experiences that kind of shaped our beliefs, and part of it
Right.
was, at least for me, I don't. I can like the bands, Striper, some great songs, POD, some great songs. Um, I don't want to be part of it. I just don't buy it. I know, as you said, Stephen, I know what I believe. I can have that time as needed to think through it. It's always a matter of, what can I do to make a positive difference each and every day? And
Yeah.
if I do that, or at least try to do that, sure. Is anybody perfect? No, but it's the counter of that just makes it just really just kind of wild and just not something that you want to be part of.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it kind of went against a lot of the teachings of Jesus, where it's like, don't pass judgment, whatever some of the passages are, and there are some great passages. It's fun to kind of look at. Isabel and I read something every morning. It's called
Nice.
Unity, and it's just a spiritual, positive message every morning to go, oh yeah, cool, and then they give like a tiny little Bible verse at the bottom that they kind of took it from.
Yeah.
But it's not like going here. You have to be. If you don't, then you're not being a part of this. You said sect, which I love. To me, it was like a cult in a sense, because it was a lot of the way I said it, and we might get a lot of flack for this, but it was almost brainwashing in a sense. They tried.
I think so. Yeah.
They tried to get you like that anything other than Christianity that they were believed in, if you didn't fit that mold, then you were just you're not you're Satan, or you're on straddling the secular line of whatever. And I finally realized at one point, and I was like, this is fucking complete bullshit. Sorry, Christians.
No, we had to do it. 51 minutes in.
I had
it's
to break the
appropriate.
mold.
Yeah.
And I have nothing against people that are into religion. I will never pass judgment on anybody.
Yeah.
Everybody paddles a boat to some sort of happiness.
Yeah.
Whatever religion you like, and this and that. I personally don't believe in religiosity. I just don't. After that kind of pushed me into more of a spiritual way of just being like, just live in the now and do good things and karma and like you said, do the best you can.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. If you're not doing bad things, then that's what matters. But it did get to a point where and again, I'm not going to bring up some of the stuff I went through, because it's just doesn't need to be on this platform. But the music was good.
There were some good bands. Yeah,
there were some good bands.
Now, in that, as part of, and sorry for jumping in right there.
No,
but as part of
it's all good.
Part of talking, there were some questionable bands for sure.
Very much so.
Now the idea, and again, if they, and they did, a lot of them got up there and it was like, I'm doing this for God. I'm doing this for Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, you can't play a lick, or it doesn't sound good. So I always stayed in there. And again, it's hard not to, I guess in this case, for the context, it's like, I am being a little judgy right now for the purpose of talking but in that there were, we talked about this on the last show. There's really only two types of music. There's good and there's bad, and you hope you fall on the good. And there was just, because of that, there was just this, and even more so now, obviously now, but since the arrival of the internet and just all these different, even our platform, anybody can put a show out. Here we are, we're doing it. But there's and I don't know, it's is good relative, or good or bad relative. I think it's pretty. It either is it or it isn't. But again, there is certainly as far as an appeal, but sometimes some of it was just like, I don't know. But if you're doing it for the reason you believe is the right reason, and it's kind of you're giving back to God, or you're giving back and you want to just, you're doing your part, this is what you feel passionate about, then hey, I'm not going to fault that. For sure. I do remember quite a few times. And again, so in that I'd have to go back and look, and for a number of years, Stephen, I was always writing down, I had this binder, then I had those old photo albums. So I had guitar picks and clippings from the, Los Angeles Times, like when a tour would come on, and I built it out. And ever since we moved, I can't find it. And I'm sure I didn't throw it out. It's got to be somewhere, because I held on to that since I was like 14 years old. So hopefully it reappears.
That'd
But
be awesome
you
to
know,
look at.
in doing a lot of these shows with Deliverance and Hero, there was a big festival, California Metal. That might have been it. It was at the Velodrome in Dominguez Hills, and that was a
I
huge
remember
festival.
that.
Yeah,
I
that was
remember
a
that.
huge
I
festival.
didn't go, but I remember it.
And that was the first time. There's still a video of that out on YouTube, and that was had to be like '88. So it's pretty funny. I'm like hiding behind the side speakers, and then it's Glenn and Robbie and Peter, and I forget. Yeah, Chris was the bass player. I laughed just because he was a goofy guy. But anyway, it's the my point in that was there were all these gatherings, and so when Glenn transitioned, I'll finish that statement. When Glenn transitioned into Deliverance,
My mind went somewhere completely wrong.
yeah, they played a mix of they played the Troubadour, they played all those all those clubs, but they played churches too. And then there was God, what was this one place called? It was called it was somewhere. Was it off like was it Cahuenga or La Cienega? And it was like a Christian. I want to say Christian nightclub because I don't think those exist. But it was kind of a Christian building. It wasn't a church, but a gathering place. How's that? But there was a lot of shows there, and I was able to a few times the song off their first record, "Temporary Insanity." Jimmy would, because I was there, goes, hey, I got to sing on the record, though you can't really hear me. That's what happens when you get buried in the mix.
Yeah.
But I was able to do the background vocals for a number of shows, and that was great. That was like, this was before I'd even like sang in a band. And I remember, a few times people talking to me, and they're, "Oh, you in a band?" I'm all, "No, I do that," or once I got into it, and it was like automatic. "Oh, so you're Christian? What do you talk about?" I go, "Oh, no, we're not Christian. I go secular," and it was like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you got
okay. It's like, really? It's like, wait, we're talking here for a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden I could have said that I was like, like a serial killer. And you probably would have, if anything, you probably gave me the same reaction. So in that, I know I'm kind of like saying the same things over a few different incidents, but it all comes back to, it's like, yeah, to me, it was never about that. And later on, and still to this day, even with the stuff that we performed, there's still, purposely or not, is there some spiritual, there we go with those words again, spiritual overtones. Yeah, I'd have to break it down and see. I think more about lyrics now than I used to when I first started. I went from not even writing lyrics down and just singing and probably changing the words every other time I did it to being a little bit more disciplined. But, it was, I wasn't writing about, like witchcraft and blood and guts and things that were kind of, metal, right? There was some themes that if I went back and pulled out, and I still have most of all these notebooks, it's like, all right, yeah, that always kind of had a, maybe more of a, a positive, maybe spiritual overtone to it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it just seemed to be that way. But was I part of the group or not? Not necessarily. And again, I wasn't trying to be, but yeah, it that whole thing, it same thing. You have your certain experiences, and I know you mentioned a few times, and no, I'm not saying this to dig that stuff out of you, because I'll respect your comment. It's like, I'm not talking about that on this platform. But in that, it's like, yeah, you remember stuff, especially when you're like 17, 18, 19, 20, and even to this day of, all right, do I want to go this way or do I want to come back? Yeah, I'm not going down that path. I'm not doing that. I don't want to be part of it. It just was just this experience.
I think to me it was it was the people that I knew. They said, "Hey, there's this new thing. It's really cool. Come check it out." It was more of a popularity thing.
Yeah.
To me, it was pop. Excuse me. It was a fad.
Yeah.
It lasted a short time. I don't remember the length of time that I was involved in it. I just remember at one point I was going, okay, something's not right here. And I think Bob still does a YouTube thing. I thought I saw something somewhere I was like,
Yeah.
I can't believe he's still alive.
Right. Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but
No, but
um, it was truly a unique experience that I'll never forget. It's a part of my life that is pushed me into the direction of where I'm at now, of not going that route,
mhm.
and not being succumbed to this. I don't know. We call it a cult, I guess. And again, I'm not knocking any religion.
No.
What Scott and I are talking about is something that happened a long time ago,
Yeah.
and it's just a story. It's not, this is where we live and this is in our heads. We're just reliving some of the things that we went through and we're a part of. That kind of question our validity of, huh?
Yeah, because really now, as you're saying that, I remember, because it's for me, it started, and for you, it again, eerily crossing over and crossing
Mm-hmm.
paths, and we probably like bumped shoulders and never
I'm sure we did.
realized it years ago. But this was in the South Bay, so this was,
Yep.
this was in Torrance, this was Manhattan
Yep.
Beach, Hermosa Beach, all those areas where,
Yep.
Sanctuary, South Bay, and then there
Yep.
was, shows that happened, all in the clubs as well as, little, I'll call them churches. It was kind of one-off stuff. High schools. I remember a show that you mentioned, Vengeance Rising. So when they were just Vengeance, and a few other, like more hardcore bands, and that was the draw because I liked that style of music. So that's where I remember it wasn't, maybe it was like Bolsa Grande High School or Westminster High School, something. It was a high school gymnasium. So there was a show, and seeing a lot of those bands and then being exposed to it and saying, okay, wow. It was, for me now reflecting on it, was being drawn to that sound of the music. And, that's what resonated with me. And there were some that liked any style because it was Christian. And for me, I didn't like any style because of that,
No.
message, because I wasn't drawn into that. I'm like, this sounds cool. This is like good. Somebody's, trying to be like Slayer. Somebody's trying to be like Metallica. Somebody's a thrash metal band. Like Deliverance, it wasn't by themselves in the Christian side, and they probably have some stories to say where they may not have been treated properly either. Um, it was just really good music. It was just,
Yeah.
it sounded great. And again, being in those rehearsal spaces and being in those studios and being, you know, being part of when all that stuff was being created, I'm like, okay, that's what stood out to me, right? That was the appeal and that was the attraction. And just the fact that it happened to kind of be connected to that, setting was probably, if anything, more just completely random than anything else. Again, it just, you know, Sean one day, hey, you guys want to go to a band practice? And we show up and it's Holy Soldier. Oh, like just the sequence of events that led up to it, like many things in life, you just don't know. And I will say to this day that for all the reasons that could have been negative, I look at the positive of that's where I really kind of was a launching pad for singing, getting the
Yeah.
instruction, meeting the
Sure.
people. If I never met Glenn, maybe in some, other path, I would have been connected to you, but that's how we connected,
Right.
So it all kind of comes back. And is it, divine order, or is it just the sequence of events? It's like, hey, you know what? Those things layered on top of one another led to something positive, led to something that brought a tremendous amount of joy then and still
Yeah.
to this day. And what we're doing here,
Right.
all this wouldn't have existed.
No.
God,
No,
we're going
not at
deep
all.
now, aren't we?
I
Yeah.
mean, I honestly, I heard something probably about 10, maybe a little longer, uh, interesting, that our days have already been written before there were days. So when you're having a crappy day, you can just go, oh, yeah, this was supposed to happen. You condition yourself to just flow with the go. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yesterday's a story. To have hope for tomorrow. Right now, we're having a great time living and talking
Living
about
it.
our
Yeah.
lives and our past and living
Yeah.
it, and that's what's important to me. we go through struggles, we have work challenges. I don't believe there's anything as called a problem. I always say it's a challenge. You work through your challenges. But with that said, is to me, it reminded me of kind of like a camp where, you were like, oh, wait a minute, we got to go do prayer now. And then when you were done, everybody was like going, yeah, it was like goofing off. It was like, there wasn't any structure to it. And it got weird. And I realized that, I mean, I was in a heavy metal band before that. I was in a heavy metal band during that. Mm-hmm. And my bass player was cracked me up because he used to come up with a different funny names for these bands. So he used to call Holy Soldier Moldy Boulder.
Yeah.
Blind Decree was Flying Debris.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And not to
who is this guy? Because I've heard all these names too. So that's funny.
Yeah, I think we all kind of started throwing it around. But those were the times that I had good when I was with my band guys, because we had fun. There wasn't any of this, let's time to stop. It's like we just had fun. We played as much as we could play. We rehearsed late at night. We rehearsed 3 or 4 times a week. Yeah. And that was the drive. It was like, that's all I wanted to do was just play in a band. I just wanted to play live music. Whether I screwed up on a song or not, I don't care. If I got dirty looks from my bass player, we would laugh. But the music that enveloped me then was just a cornerstone of this little Christianity thing that I went through. Yeah. And it's just I was like, it's like passing clouds. When those things pop into your memory, you're like, oh, it's just like a cloud. You don't have to stay there. You just look at it and go, okay, that was then, and I'm good with it. I don't have any remorse for it. I don't hold any judgment. I don't have anything negative to say other than it was just very bizarre. Yeah. I guess that's how I could sum it up. It was a very bizarre situation.
No, it was, and I won't repeat everything you said. Just agreeing with it, and part of that was it was this experience that just, again, I've said odd multiple times now, so I'll just say it again. It just struck me. It struck me as odd. Things seemed forced in some way. It didn't seem genuine at all, and it's almost like whatever you've done in your life, person X, if this is your penance and this is what you're trying to make up, well, don't put it on me. Don't put it on anyone else. And right. It just didn't work for me. So,
well, I think that he also played on vulnerable kids too.
Yeah.
In a sense. And I not to make light or day about reference of kids, probably boys more than girls. Was kind of how I felt about it, but and that is a same with a lot of religions, priests and Catholic priests and so forth. And I don't want this to turn into that. I think we're just sharing experiences. We probably we're opening this can of worms that we've held in for how many years? 30 plus years.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Cause I've never really talked about it. I look back at it and I think the if the subtext was just that these experiences happen to be centered around this, Christian music scene, it helped drive me down the path of what I ended up doing, right. And still can to this day. Yeah. And maybe similar experiences if we were exposed to the country music scene. Right. And I would have had because I did when I was 12, I had a huge cowboy hat because we went to Montana, and the big giant belt buckle, which I wish I still had today, was like a hubcap size, Yeah. And so, we kind of just, in some cases you apply that mask based on the certain time of your life. Right. But I guess in this case, it was really more a matter of just, the music stood out, some because it was really good, some because it was really bad, just to state what it is. Everyone saw I guess most people saw the good just in what the message was. And again, that's fine. But again, everything that rolls back into it is like, you definitely don't treat people equally.
No.
They
And
didn't
real
treat
quick,
people equally.
I
Yeah.
have to interject the six
Yeah.
degrees of Scott Nocon and Stephen James. You mentioned
Yeah.
Montana. My brother went to college in Montana, and I went there a few times to go see him. So beautiful, beautiful country up there.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Billings,
That's funny.
Montana.
Okay. We
Anyhow,
were, yeah, we went through Billings and Libby. My mom had a best friend, and I couldn't tell you where Billings was in relation to Libby, but Libby was, I guess, small town is relative because it's Montana.
yeah.
But I remember that because what I took with me on that trip, and I'll go here and jump back into this topic. I took my Walkman and I took my copy of Peace of Mind, and
Nice.
we had tell you this is the first time I pitched a tent. Now we had tents out in their property, so you just kind of live on the land, and they had a house, but we could be like a half a mile away, and just we were out there in the wilderness. But I had my Iron Maiden on, and I had my Peace of Mind.
Fun times.
I kept my peace of mind for that. Uh,
Yeah, you
yeah,
need to.
there's some more stuff in there. The I guess part of it is there was just such a it was hard from like the Christian, Christian will bring it back in. So we talked about the people, and that is something impactful because it definitely, it definitely doesn't strike a chord with me the same about, again, there's all these subcultures and we're going to talk about punk in a few episodes, and everyone kind of assumes that, assumes that look, right? You got new romance, you have punk, you have heavy metal, you have ska, all those. But in many of those instances, many of those genres, everybody was cool. Everybody kind of got along. Maybe not
Right.
the skinheads and the long hairs back at Fenders when they had fights. There was definitely a decided difference there. But that was just people just like wanting to show how big their dicks were. More so than anything else. And never getting stuck in that stuff because there's some brutal battles that went on in Fenders
And then
back
at
in the
one
day.
point, though, the punk rockers, and I'm not going to reference punk rockers as skinheads,
Yeah,
but punk
because there was
rockers and metal
difference.
guys
Yeah,
got along for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. There definitely was a difference in those types for sure.
One
But
other thing I wanted to bring up that I noticed, and I'm not going to mention names, is that the people that are still kind of into that Christianity thing have pulled politics into it. So some of the people that I don't want to say friends. I
yeah,
still don't know why I have some of they want to be your friend. I look at my friend listing. I'm like, I want to be your friend. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. No.
yeah,
But they're hugely political now,
hmm
whereas that back then never was anything brought up about that.
yeah, yeah. And I'm with you. I don't want to go there either, other than just to say I agree with that and how there are similar types that have similar opinions and views of people, and there's zero tolerance and acceptance. How's that for being vague but very, very
There you
precise
go.
at the same time?
There you
But to
go.
bring it back to the music is, yeah, you look at all the other, I believe so. And again, we invite you guys because I think that this is probably, I don't want to say controversial, but the overall topic might be a little bit more pointed and sharp than some of our other ones. And if you feel differently, and if you were, part of any of those, churches or groups or gang in the context of just people, leave a comment,
Sure.
and it maybe your experience was different, and maybe you weren't affected, but maybe you were,
Yeah.
and maybe it's like, yeah, I can relate to it. Again, people's experiences are going to be different, and it's really
Yeah.
more a matter of, were you running towards something or running away from something?
Correct.
And I think for me, I wasn't doing either. I was just kind of existing during that time and taking it
Yeah. Me
in,
too.
and
Me
then
too.
kind of looking at it and saying, I don't know if that's something that I want to be part of. And it was more than a feeling, it you felt it for sure, but it's just
You know
like
who else
there's
said
all
that?
these, yeah.
Boston.
Yeah. So then now it's a good segue. I got into Boston, and I got it. No, but it just everything tied to it. But for me, what was the draw into it was, again, that random, again, the people you meet, and the experiences you have.
Yeah.
That's what life is. Um, you know, hey, you guys want to go see a band practice? Sure. That opened up this. That was the pathway to Christian music and
Yeah.
Christian heavy metal and Christian thrash, and a
Yeah.
lot of good experiences, and learned a lot musically from some really really good people. Learned a lot of what to avoid from maybe some questionable people, or ones that just didn't know any better. But either way, there was kind of the yin and the yang, the pros and cons on both sides, that kind of just, again, shaped my youth, shaped, I was going to say, like, was that Youth of a Generation? Yeah, Youth of a Nation from POD. Um, you know, like, it's funny, when they came out, I didn't realize they were Christian, and it
I didn't
wasn't
either.
about
I
that.
still
And
didn't know that until today, until you told me
yeah,
that.
and then you find out it's like, oh, payable on death, kind of, that was, POD spelled out. But it was, people probably hated on them too. It's like, oh, well, they're mainstream. They're not, it's like, are you supposed to be, not successful, and maybe trying to rub two nickels together, but you're in a band and you're talking about God, or having, like, I don't know, Youth of a Nation. I haven't read the lyrics, but who knows, right? Same thing. It's like you just appreciate what they did. Under Oath, I know we're jumping back into these. Under Oath is a band that, still to this day, plays and tours, and Define the Great Line debuted at number 2 on Billboard. You know, so they've had a lot of mainstream success, and once you dug into it, then that's when it was mentioned. Oh yeah, they're a Christian band, but they're not leading with that. Um, As I Lay Dying, you mentioned them earlier, Stephen, right? So it's like,
Right.
again, there's bands today, and there's even ones kind of fall into this. Um, let's see, I got some other ones in here.
I'm actually looking at the list, and I'm like, I just don't know any of these bands. And
Yeah,
not that
there's
again,
some
it's not my forte.
No, and again, there's some that stood out. Like, again, during that time in the mid to late '80s, where we knew of these bands, just because of shows or people we were around, where you had Barren Cross. I remember I saw them a lot. I remember, same thing. You had good experiences with them, and were friendly with them. I remember talking with them, and I have I bought their EP. There was like their demo EP was like all blue and with like a clear case. And then they had a couple records
flame
out. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, this is a good band. And then Bloodgood, remember them. There was a number of White Cross, or not number of White Cross, but there's a few different Neon Cross, White Cross.
Yeah.
We
used to call them Klingon moss.
Yeah. So there was all those, that did it, and that was Guardian. That was the same band that they were practicing in that same studio, and played around in the same time. So yeah, again, it was a time and place for me. I'll end on this, and then I'll hand it to you to wrap it up. It was a time and place, which got me exposed. Again, there I go saying that again, but opened up my, how's that? Opened up my, let me say a different choice of words, just broadened my interest, right, into more metal bands, different genres, being able to be part of live shows, that was a path of being part of Road Crew. And then I went on, from there, and on the completely other side, though, they're, I think they shared, probably similar beliefs for sure, and were really good people. Viking, I did more shows than I could remember, as part of their crew. And that was just a fantastic experience.
Right.
So it's like, again, same thing. It was a time and place. Luckily, I'll say it now in hindsight, I avoided any of the pitfalls. Do some people need it? Do some people need Jesus? Of course. Does everyone need something positive in their life? Absolutely. Again, were some people, either running away from something or running to something because they didn't have it, and maybe they had trouble in their lives? Sure.
Yeah, right. Trying to find their purpose.
Yeah. And again, all that is understandable. Just the overtones of just being, extremely judgmental, and not accepting in many instances that I saw. Just I was able to make a pretty hard right out of there, but the music stayed, and that was the good part.
Yeah. Yeah. I again, like every once in a while, Striper will pop up on my YouTube thing and I'll watch
Yeah.
it. I mean, they're holding on still. I don't know how popular they are as they were. I think to me, Striper was the top number one Christian metal band,
Yeah.
and then everybody wanted to be them, not
Right.
look like them, but they wanted to be in that. Oh, hey, well that they're making it, why can't we make it?
Right.
And there were a few good records that came out of it that
Hmm.
I was a part of, not playing on, but I played with some of these musicians. I knew some of these musicians, and I supported them. But I never really could grasp on to the message of it because I just never was like, just didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I was like you. I just wanted to be a part of metal music and play metal music, like I said before.
Yeah.
And if I could be around that and be a part of that, that kind of was like, it was almost like a flock of birds. They just kind of go wherever they go, and it's like, oh well, everybody's going in this direction. I guess I'll go in that direction.
Yeah.
And then
I
I
agree.
just said
That's
I
a
can't
good
do it
point.
anymore. I just can't do it anymore. And
Yeah.
it was time for me to go. Well, I'm done.
I guess part of it too, and I want to add this really quick, and then we'll get out of here. Again, I said this earlier, where it didn't seem genuine. It seemed like a mask.
No.
And your analogy with the birds, like they all kind of stayed together, they flocked together, and it was
Yep.
a lot of dare I say sheep, but there was a lot of followers in there. Were there really true leaders? Sure, there had to be somebody to kind of like lead that. Be in front of that. But it I guess part of it struck me, and I'm still this way today, where it's like, be it with any topic, and we can say the topics that most people should never even talk about because it, too many varying opinions, and it doesn't lead to a good conclusion. And certainly now,
Right.
religion, politics,
Mm-hmm.
music, maybe even get into food that people, oh my God, I can't believe that you like pizza. Well, pizza has gluten. It's like, oh my God, you can't, you can't almost go into any conversation anymore other than just
No.
being
No.
completely
Everybody's
void of it.
opinionated.
And
Everybody's
so in
opinionated.
that, I think part of the music, and this kind of was triggered off of what you just said, is, you know, it just didn't seem natural to me, and I'm kind of like I'll certainly talk about a lot of things when we get together here, but I don't need to air everything. I think in
No.
most instances nobody really cares, and
No.
aside from having stories and entertainment, which this is about, it's like when it comes down to it, I don't need to share that. I don't need to think that way. I don't need to put that, if I'm a Christian or I'm not, on my sleeve. I don't need to go,
Nope.
look, here it is. I don't need to show that. I guess I wasn't lacking anything where I had to
Exactly.
compensate for it,
Good point.
overcompensate for it, and say, well,
Good
look at
point.
me. I'm better than you, or I'm
Yeah.
and if it's not even trying to compete with others, it's like I didn't have a low self opinion,
No.
so in that, I think I can kind of keep it in check. But other than that, it's like, is most of all that, without getting like into, psychology and drilling down in that, that'll be for another episode. It's,
Yeah.
are you trying to make up for something? And again, I think I've heard this a number of times now, and I'll say it one more time. Again, are you running towards something or running away from something? And that
Right.
kind of, I think, kind of puts it all together. Is, again, do you, but are you really doing you, or are you just following someone else's lead? I think in all things,
Yeah.
think for yourself, do what you feel is right. That's a fine line between what you think is right and what is right. But again, the golden rule, like, treat people well, try to do something positive each day. Again, if you sit
Right.
down and read Bible verses 15 minutes before work every day or at the end of the day, that's great. There's apps
Yeah.
and there's all these things that help you just kind of center and find peace. And there's a number of ways that you can do it, just where you need to kind of step away just from the, you know, from life. But in
And
that,
it could
do it
even be
because
30 seconds of taking a few deep breaths. It
yeah, all
doesn't,
that, but do it
it,
because you want to do it. And
right.
I guess the message in all this is that, that you can cloak a number of different things, be it music, be it movies could have all these subtext tied into it with the true
Sure.
meaning, books and all that stuff. But ultimately, follow follow your heart, but
Follow your
also
heart.
have your brain, working, have your head screwed on right, and
Hmm.
just don't get led down a path where all of a sudden you're manipulated. We didn't say that yet. That's probably part of it. And
That's
you
good.
wonder later, what was I about? So other than, maybe being a little damning on this whole topic about it, I think when it comes down to the music, we we either played in bands like you did that were Christian, or in that, or around them, working in crews, being at shows, being part of it, being able to experience
Yeah.
and seeing, is this something that you really want to be part of or not? But
Right.
definitely lessons learned, definitely experiences gained.
Yeah. Well, we got heavily deep on this episode
Yeah, yeah,
31 of Talking Shh, which is, and Scott and I, we are alluding to pretty much every time we get together, is that we can just talk. Well, we have an idea of what we want to talk about, and then that just opens up. Um, you know, uh, we want to get back to our what we originally want to do is talk music, but sometimes we get
yeah,
into these philosophical or deep times to reflect on our pasts. And if that
yeah.
opens something up for you, the listener, and hopefully in a good way, or in a way that you like, maybe is bringing stuff up. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. What was I thinking? Or, we're all about being happy. We're all about having a good time, about being a part of music. Again, and I'm going to keep plugging. Scott does a radio show on Tuesdays, 99WNRR.com. It's No Consideration Radio. It's a phenomenal show. It's a couple hours long. There's a couple of different segments he does. He does a triple thrash back about 2/3 into it. He'll play little snippets of our show on there. But do yourself a favor and listen, because there's some phenomenal music he plays.
Yeah, no, I
Plug,
appreciate it. Yeah, yeah, that was the
plug
plug.
it.
Yeah, I know, and we probably should have done the beginning, but if you guys held on, for almost 90 minutes, and again, same thing. You can start and stop
Doesn't
this.
seem like
You
90
get out of your
minutes.
car, it just re-engages. So again, on that, we'll get back into a full music theme. I thought it
Yeah,
was again. I wasn't really sure where this conversation was going to
I
go,
didn't either.
which is kind of cool, and that's kind of the idea where we have a theme, and then we kind of riff from there. And at that point, then sometimes, well, I'll kind of go back. Hopefully, my eyes don't roll up, and I kind of nod out. But I'll be thinking about it. Oh yeah, that triggered a memory from years ago that had been tucked
Exactly.
away, and we'll talk about it. So again,
Yeah.
as Stephen said, please, leave a comment. As always, we appreciate everyone that is listening to the show, either on the videos from YouTube and stuff on Instagram, and again, anywhere, Spotify predominantly, but anywhere you can stream podcast, it's out there. So there's no
TikTok,
reason not to listen
Instagram.
to it. You got
Yeah.
TikTok, continue to do it there. Again, shameless plug, please. Yeah, all those sites are there. You can find the talking show. Like, subscribe, help with the algorithms that just keep things going. You can go out to 99WNRR.com and you can buy merchandise. Just go to the store link. We got some talking merchandise out there.
Yep.
And again, we enjoy doing this. That's why we're here. Hopefully, you guys gain some pleasure, if I can say that, some pleasure from listening. It's interesting. Maybe you learn something new about certain bands, and maybe you go check them out. And I want to hear that too, right? If we say some band names, maybe you never listened to Vengeance Rising, maybe you never listened to Deliverance, and you check them out and go, whoa, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah.
So we'll keep doing this, Stephen.
Yes.
As always, I appreciate your your time and your energy that you bring to it. And I
Likewise.
think we got episode 31 in the books. So until next time, in the can.
Yeah.
Until next time. And here's a little sweatshirt you can find.
When we ever start getting cool weather in California, I'll start wearing clothes that cover all this and wear my talking.
I'm upstairs with air conditioning, so it's and actually it is a little warmer right now. But anyway, until next time, thanks guys, and see ya.
See ya.
There we go.
That was fun. That was interesting.
Thanks again for tuning in to the show. We'll be back every week with a brand new episode. Make sure you check us out on Instagram at Talking Show, and also listen on Spotify or wherever you can stream podcast. See ya.